Okay. Today I'm with students from Mrs. King's Sunnyside class. Hello, class.
Hi.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about Black History Month. As I shared with them, I have different feelings about that. I think that we should be celebrating the contributions of Hispanics, Blacks, Asians, and others to what became the United States of America over time. And I think we should be doing it on a daily basis, not just during special months or special days. But having said that, I just want to share with you there are special people, being an African American and having pride in my heritage. There are certain people that are heroes to me. And when I was in 4th and 5th grade, I read about some of them. So I want to share a few of them with you. One of my favorite was Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was a conductor on the Underground Railroad. Now, the Underground Railroad was not a train, and it wasn't really a railroad. It was a system for getting slaves out of the South into the North and getting them far enough out of the South that they couldn't be captured again. So Harriet Tubman did a good part of her work prior to the Civil War. She actually went back and got her mother and her father and some of her relatives out of slavery, along with other people, and came close to getting caught. One story that I remember, she dressed up as a man, and one of the slave catchers walked right past her because there were wanted posters that had her picture, walked right past her and didn't notice that it was her, so she was able to escape. After or during the Civil War, she became a spy for the Union forces. So she has a very fascinating story. Another person that was a hero to me, my mother gave me a book about the time I was in 5th grade of a man by the name of George Washington Carver. He was a scientist, graduated from the University of Iowa, and again, this was around the time of the Civil War when blacks were discriminated against. And Dr. Carver cared about what was going on in the South as far as farming. See, at that time, Southerners would grow the same crops over and over again, and they didn't understand that if you grow the same crops, you're taking all the nutrition out of the soils. So the South would grow cotton generation after generation, and there was nothing left in the soil. So he suggested to them that they grow peanuts and that they grow sweet potatoes, which are two crops that feed nutrition into the soil. Along with that, he came up with hundreds of uses for peanuts. Some oils that could be used medicinally as medicines, ice cream, of course, peanut butter, but there were a lot of real interesting and fascinating uses. Another hero of mine was Phyllis Wheatley. Phyllis Wheatley, I think when she first was published, before the Revolutionary War, she was 13 years old. And she was the first woman to be published, to have her poetry published in the United States, and the first African American to have her poetry published. So a lot of my heroes are people from the past and people who lived a few hundred years ago. I admire their courage. They lived during very tough times. Some of them were slaves, could be beaten. Some of them learned how to read on their own because in some places it was illegal for black people to learn how to read. And so it means a lot to me that they have that kind of courage. They'll always be role models for me. I love poetry. And one of my favorite poets is Langston Hughes. He was part of a period of time called the Harlem Renaissance. Harlem's a part of New York where black musicians and poets and writers gathered during the 20s, the 30s, and 40s. Matter of fact, my father, who was a chauffeur for a very wealthy man, got to meet people like Duke Ellington and some of the famous musicians and writers during that time, and my father would sit down and tell me about going to a famous dance place and jazz club called the Cotton Club during that time. Langston Hughes was one of the poems, and I'm going to read one of his poems and then I'm going to quote it. I Too is the name of the poem. I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to the kitchen to eat in the kitchen when company comes. but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Beside, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. And when he wrote this, because there was discrimination, as a matter of fact, when my father was a chauffeur driving the rich men that he worked for around, my father could not eat in the same restaurant in the dining hall with this man, and my father could not stay in the same hotels that the man that he drove for stayed in, because it was against the law. The other Langston Hughes poem that I remember from high school is one of my favorites and stuck with me so much that I memorized it. And the title I've forgotten, but the poem is this: I stay cool, I dig all jive, and that is how I stay alive. My lesson as I live and learn, dig and be dug in return. Again, from these heroes, from literature and other things, I've learned a lot of really neat things about the African American experience, and as I said before, I'm proud of my heritage. A lot of struggle, people who relied a lot on faith to get them through, and when you think about it, a lot of the opportunities that I have as a superintendent and to own nice things and to have an education, a lot of people suffered for a few hundred years to make it possible for me to have the opportunities that I have and that my own kids have. And I'm very grateful to them.